نكرر الشكر للمونيتور سيف جغادل على جميع الفيديوهات وأعمال الفيديو لمؤتمر بوينت. الآن ننتقل إلى الجلسة الافتتاحية للمؤتمر، وندعو ميسر الجلسة السيد أسماء شريفي الرئيس التنفيذي لشبكة تي CID من تونس.
صباح الخير من تونس إلى العراق الحبيبة. شكرا على الاستضافة وشكرا على هذه الفرصة. كان في مجموعة من التقديمات التقنية، الآن حنحاول بنشوف كيف الحوكمة فيها بتساعد على تحسين ظروف عيش المواطن، وكيف ممكن اللي هي تحسن في الخدمات. بقدم نفسي أسماء الشريفي من تونس، أنا مستشارة مع الاتحاد الإفريقي في كل ما هو ريفورم، يعني كل ما هي إصلاحات ورسم سياسات. معنا بالنسبة لهذه الجلسة 2 متدخلين اللي هم حيكونوا متدخلين عن بعد. التدخلات حتكون باللغة الإنجليزية لكن موجود فيه ترجمة، يعني اللي مستحق ترجمة لو ممكن ياخذ العبوة الصغيرة. لو ممكن بنشوف هالمتدخلين موجودين معنا. من المتدخلين بالبرنامج حيكون كل ما هو يتعلق بالحوكمة، ما هي تحديات الموضوع، هو ما هي تحديات الشفافية والانفتاح للحكومات في المنطقة العربية، المبادرات والبرامج الإقليمية التي تعزز الممارسات الجيدة في الحكم. حيكون متدخل معنا مستر ألكساندرو بورليني، وهو رئيس قسم وحدة الحوكمة المفتوحة في منطقة التعاون والاقتصادي والتنمية من باريس. وتكون معنا شيريزا باسو، وهي نائبة مدير منطقة آسيا والمحيط الهادي لبرنامج شراكة الحكومات المفتوحة. Bonjour Alexandre. Hello. Do you hear me?
Hello, good morning.
Sorry for the delay. Sorry for the delay.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Thank you. I will start by I will present you briefly, and I will ask you 2 questions. بالنسبة للسيد ألكساندرو وهو مقيم في باريس، هو انضم إلى منظمة التعاون الاقتصادي والتنمية في عام 2009، حيث يشغل منصب رئيس وحدة الحكومة المفتوحة والاتصال العام والفضاء المدني. عمل سابقا في وزارة الإدارة العامة والابتكار في حكومة إيطاليا للأمم ومع برنامج الأمم المتحدة، كذلك مع برنامج الأغذية العالمي ومنظمة العمل الدولية. كذلك هو متخرج من جامعة جون كابوت في روما، وحاصل على درجة الماجستير في العلوم الأنثروبولوجية الاجتماعية ودراسة التنمية من كلية لندن. ألكساندرو، حابة لو بتعرفنا ما هي منظمة التعاون الدولي، وما هي تعريفكم للحكومة المفتوحة، لأنه موجود عندنا دايما الحكومة المفتوحة، الحوكمة، والناس يعني ما بتفرق ما بيناتها. ولو ممكن بتعطينا لمحة على برامجكم في منطقة الشرق الأوسط، وشكرا. The floor is yours. Do you hear me?
Sure. I assume you translated the questions you sent us in advance, so there's no need to repeat them in English.
Okay, I will ask again. Okay, can you give us a small an overview of OECD? What is OECD as an organization?
Sure.
Can you also share with us what is your definition for the open governance, open government? Because we hear a lot of words as a trends, but people are a little bit confused. And also, can you share with us an overview of your program in the region?
Sure.
How you act.
With great pleasure. So, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important conference and with very distinguished panelists. So my name is Alessandro Bellantoni. I work for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. Some of you might not know about it. The OECD is an organization with 38 member countries, mostly the whole of Europe, North America, Latin America, Asia, and South Pacific. States are part of it. It was created in the aftermath of World War II to promote economic cooperation and socioeconomic development. Iraq is not a member of the OECD, but in 2004, the OECD launched a program which is called the OECD MENA initiative that has two pillars, one focused on economic cooperation and another one on public governance. In the context of the pillar on public governance, there is a working group focusing on open and innovative government, and Iraq is a member of this working group. In the context of this working group, the OECD, its members, and countries in the Middle East and North Africa cooperate on policies and initiatives to promote open government. Now, at the OECD, we define open government as a culture of governance that promotes the principles of transparency, integrity, accountability, and stakeholder participation in support of democracy and inclusive growth. So our understanding of open government is to be a cluster of policies and initiatives that aim at translating those principles of transparency, integrity, accountability, and participation into reforms that support democracy and inclusive growth. Now, within this line of work, the OECD has published in 2017 what we call an OECD recommendation. An OECD recommendation is a legal instrument that our members approve that promote action in a specific policy context. And so in 2017, we approved the OECD recommendation on open government that gives 10 provisions of what an open government policy should be in a country. Now, this recommendation is open to non-member countries, and in the Middle East and North Africa region, already Asia have adhered, meaning that they are committing to promote reforms along the lines in respecting the principles that the OECD has defined. You can find all these things very easily on internet if you Google OECD recommendation on open government. And there you can find definition and also these 10 provisions that very clearly specify what a national open government agenda should be. One important aspect, specifically in the field of climate change, of environment, is that we focus mostly along two main lines. On the one hand is the contribution that open data, civic tech, gov tech can do to promote the fight against climate change. And we have very nice examples of civic tech companies using open data from ministries of transport, for example, to improve mobility, urban mobility, national mobility, to reduce carbon emissions, or to make more effective use of existing transportation. So there are very many specific examples I could give, maybe perhaps later in today's conversation, but this is one big field of work for us, open data and the interactions with GovTech and Big Tech. The other one that we are focusing on and we are working with members in order to promote it is the link between citizens' participation and climate change policies in countries. I'm sorry. One example of this, the most famous example, I would say, at least in the OECD context, is the Citizens' Assembly that the government of France organized around environment and climate change. This Citizens' Assembly, as you all know, is one of the possibilities that government have to organize citizens' participation activities. Citizens' assemblies in particular are a newer, a more advanced form of engagement, because governments delegate responsibilities to citizens to actually deliberate on very specific actions then the government then is supposed to consider, usually through parliament decisions, in a specific policy field. Now, these kind of assemblies are being replicated in many OECD countries now, and the OECD has published extensively on how to better structure them. We have published a series of principles around them and how to evaluate them in order to make sure that citizens' involvement in environmental policies or climate change policies is actually conducive to actions and that responds to their expectations. Again, you can find these easily on our website if you type on internet OECD deliberative wave, which is a report that focuses exactly on this. And then to finish my introductory remarks, I think what can be interesting for you is that last year, together with ESCWA, the UN Commission that covers the Arab countries, we have published a report titled The Economic and Social Impact of Open Government Reforms. And again, it's freely available on the internet, The Economic and Social Impact of Open Government Reforms. And this is a report that is only focusing on North Africa and the Middle East. And you can find a plethora of cases where open government principles were transformed into reforms. Many of these reforms are, of course, part of the OGP national action plans of these countries, and in particular of Morocco, Tunisia, and Jordan, which under the authority of Sharia are the only three Arab countries at the moment that are part of the OGP, and therefore there is a strong link between the OECD policy recommendations and the use of OGP action plans to implement them concretely at the country level. I'll stop here, but happy to take questions and follow up conversation later. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandro. Can you wait with us? Maybe there will be a question from the room after for you. الآن سنمر إلى شيريزا. شيريزا هي مقيمة في سنغافورة وهي نائبة مدير الدعم القطري في شراكة الحكومة المفتوحة، وهي تقود فريق عمل دعم الحكومات المفتوحة في منطقة آسيا والمحيط الهادي، وهي المشرفة على استراتيجيات تحديث المحلية لشراكة الحكومة المفتوحة لعام 2020 وسياسة مشاركة البرلمان في الانفتاح في عام 2021. Sheriza, the floor is yours. Can you please present us, give us an overview, what is OGP as an initiative, what are the criteria, how country can join, and also can you give us some example of the best practice that they can inspire people, how they can deal with challenge, especially climate change. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Asma. It's a real pleasure to be able to join this conference, even if only virtually. What I'll do quickly is also share my screen to just run you through a few visuals as we speak. Can you confirm if you're able to see the slides?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. Let's give it a few seconds. Is that coming through?
No, I will. Technical team, we need your assistance. Nothing.
All right. Okay. Technical issues. No worries. We'll try and do this without the tech. All right. So, picking up on where Alessandro left in some sense, the Open Government Partnership is very much built around these ideas of transparency, accountability, participation, which are very much embodied in the definition of open government that Alessandro shared from OECD. So the OGP is a global multi-stakeholder initiative that was established just over 10 years ago. Let me, before I get into the details of our origins, how countries can join and the kinds of things countries are pursuing through the OGP, let me share a few short stories and take you on a tour around the world, if you will, to make some of these definitions come alive. So in 2016, the Madrid city government created an online platform, Decide Madrid, to encourage direct participation in decision-making. Residents could use this platform not just to decide who's in charge, but be in charge of local government decisions themselves. The platform's overall aim was to ensure that the government of Madrid was transparent, but also widen public participation in decision-making and spending processes. So through this, residents could give feedback on policies proposed by the city through the website, but also offer a forum where issues could be debated and you could hear multiple points of view. It allowed members to offer their own proposals, take part in the budget allocation process, and this has resulted in citizens funding projects that meet their needs. Projects around improving citywide cycling, more parks, cleaner energy. Importantly, it is now being used by 90 governments across the world, with Uruguay, very far away from Madrid, becoming one of the first OGP countries to launch it nationwide. In Ukraine, before the full-scale invasion by Russia, you had some amazing things happening around public contracting, which I'm sure Gavin will hear more from Gavin about as well. So there you had oligarchs capture the public contracting process. But tech-savvy activists and government reformers came together to create online portals, one that goes by the famous name of Prozoro, which draws on publicly available data and has opened up the public procurement process, radically improving transparency, but also injecting much-needed competition into the public procurement process. There are many accounts of the billions of dollars that the government has saved through this initiative. The reports that citizens have filed, which have escalated violations that have been taking place. But it's also created a level playing field for the private sector. The related Dozoro platform enables citizens to monitor delivery with the government committed to respond. What is fascinating is, of course, the situation has radically changed in Ukraine as we speak right now. But those very same reformers are coming together to think about what a transparent and open recovery and reconstruction process in Ukraine could look like. In Indonesia, we have citizens who can submit their feedback through Lapor, a nationwide system for registering and responding to complaints. It follows a no wrong door policy. So no matter what channel a citizen uses, their feedback or their complaint is directed to the right agency, and agencies are required to respond and take action. If a citizen doesn't get a response within 5 working days, Lapor's team calls the agency's liaison officer and it is escalated through the chains. Overall statistics on response and fixed rates per agency are being discussed to manage agency performance, but also tied into the performance incentives of officials. And then finally, last stop on the world tour, South Africa, which is committed to creating a portal that would make budget information more accessible to citizens and increase their participation in the budget process. So prior to recent reforms, information on government public expenditure was static, unintegrated, and really not conducive for public to engage with the budget process. Working with a network of citizen organizations, the government launched Vulekamali, a web portal that houses both the national and provincial departmental budgetary information, as well as information on actual expenditures. Additionally, the portal has equipped citizens with learning resources on the budget process. The government also holds civic information drives to explain the budget process and how to use the Vulekamali platform. And now, using the platform, citizens have already created proposals for more housing, equal opportunities for women, for road maintenance and infrastructure. So these are just some examples to illustrate the kinds of reforms that, many of which, of course, originated beyond the OGP platform, but have been continued through OGP by these member countries to ensure that there's a constant dialogue between government and civil society to see how systems can become more open, more inclusive, to ensure that citizens have a voice in decision-making processes. So now to our origins, a little bit about the partnership itself. OGP was created in 2011. The idea was to bring champions from both government and civil society together in tackling the difficult problems that societies across the world face. It was different from other initiatives in that it had both governments and civil society in its governance structure. So we were founded by 8 governments and 9 civil society leaders. And from the very onset, it tried to focus on a very different kind of multilateral or multi-stakeholder approach. One was that it would be very rooted in action. It wouldn't just be an initiative that would talk about how things could be different, but one that would actually spur action on open government. The second, that it would have the spirit of open, of co-creation or an equal voice for government and civil society, embedded not just in our governance structure at the global level, but also at the national level, where governments and civil society are expected to work together, bring in wider public input. And third, that there would actually be an accountability mechanism to all of this, that governments would not just be able to make promises without having some kind of reflection back on whether those promises were being kept, but also the degree by which they were actually producing results, the depth and the meaningfulness of the participation between government and civil society and citizens. So 10 years ago, we were founded at a time when there were 2 global trends, one for more open and one for more closed government. And OGP's simple ambition was to tip the balance in favor of openness, to change the culture of government, as Alessandro spoke about. So today, we are a partnership of more than 76 countries and more than 106 local governments. OGP Local is a relatively new but a growing arm of the Open Government Partnership. Every member that joins OGP essentially commits to a few things. One, it commits to upholding the principles of open government, but importantly also it commits to developing these 2-year action plans, 2 or 4-year action plans, which are jointly produced by government and civil society, and have very specific reforms embedded within them that are expected to be completed within that time period. And as I mentioned earlier, they are also committed to get themselves independently assessed. So there is both an assessment of the level of ambition, the level of completion, but also the meaningfulness and depth of the dialogue between government and civil society, as I mentioned. There are thousands of civil society organizations that are part of this global network today. Many partner organizations, both Alessandro, Gavin on the call today, are very much core partners, drivers, and engines of the partnership as well. And then the other important thing to remember about OGP's, I guess, design feature is that we are not a partnership that is prescriptive in telling members what to do. So every member, whether it's national or local, decides for themselves what priorities they will pursue within their 2-year or 4-year action plans. And we're seeing a wide range of themes emerge in our first 10 years. So members are working from all types of issues, ranging from guarding civic space, fighting corruption, addressing climate change, but also working towards improving public services, opening up budgets, and frontier issues like improving digital governance and making sure that the digital transformation agenda delivers for citizens rather than succumb to sort of the dark forces of misinformation, disinformation, and lack of accountability of algorithmic decisions. So that's roughly about the partnership. How to join, there are some eligibility criteria that countries must meet, and I can share with the organizer some of the information. I had them on slides, but I'll try to walk you through them. So there are a few eligibility criteria. We are voluntary in that there are no, we are not an organization that has a formal sort of memorandum of understanding or a formal legal basis for members to join. We are a voluntary initiative, but there are some basic eligibility criteria that countries must meet in order to join. So the first 4 are around core eligibility. We look at whether countries have access to information provisions in place, whether that's in the form of draft laws, constitutional provisions, or a bill that is actually in place. We look at fiscal transparency, particularly whether countries publish the executive budget proposal and the government audit report. Then we look at asset disclosure, so whether high-ranking officials are required, on the one hand, to declare their assets and income, but on the other, whether that information is then made publicly available. And then we look at civil liberties. so the degree of civic freedoms there are in the country. Now, for each of these eligibility criteria, OGP does not collect or assess the data itself. We rely on third-party indicators to be able to draw these assessments. So countries have to earn a minimum sort of set of 12 out of 16 points or 9 out of 12 points in order to become eligible. So that's core eligibility. But then given the importance of civic participation, civil society engagement in our partnership, there's a second check, which is the values check, which is an important part of eligibility. And here we're essentially looking at the operating environment for civil society. We look at a data set called the VDEM data set on democracy to look at two things. How easy is it for civil society to mobilize, to associate, and to disband? So the CSO entry and exit in shorthand. And the second is, in practice, does civil society experience repression or not? So again, here, there's a minimum number of points countries have to be able to get in order to become eligible. Alessandro mentioned that from the MENA region, we have Jordan, Morocco, and Tunisia. There aren't too many others that are eligible at this point. Where Iraq stands currently is that it meets the asset disclosure requirements. It does meet the values check because it scores adequate points on civil society repression indicators, but there is more work to do also around the regulations enabling civil society entry and exit. On the core areas, of course, if Iraq were to make progress around developing, adopting an access to information law, opening up the budgetary information that I mentioned, then the pathway to eligibility would become quite clear. So that's how countries can join. Once they do join, of course, there is support available from the Secretariat, the support unit, which is what I represent here, from a wide network of partners, to support both the co-creation of these action plans, but also implementation of specific reforms. We try and provide our global platform to foster peer exchange and learning, both from what works, but also from the failures, what doesn't work, and try and maintain political momentum for the agenda through high-level engagement. So I'll stop there. I mean, there's a lot to cover about a 10-year partnership, but hopefully that's enough right at the start. The one thing I would say on climate and open government, this is obviously an extremely important area. We don't have nearly as many commitments in this area as we would like, and as the climate emergency would almost demand. But we do know that the value proposition for open in climate action is extremely solid. Transparency allows governments, citizens, and markets to see the true costs of pollution, develop responses in develop action
يطوروها حتى يكون هناك تنفيذ لهذه الأشياء على أهمية المعلومات والمتعلقة بالنفط والغاز الأحفوري.
The real need for vulnerable communities who, as we all know, are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. It's important that they have their voice in decision-making spaces in climate adaptation and mitigation policies. So here we have a few examples from Argentina, for example, where they're designing climate
يحاولون تصميم حلول للتغيير المناخي ويمكن أن تكون المعلومات عن التغيير المناخي متوفرة لهم للمجتمعات المدنية، وأيضا حتى مجالس الشعب وفي اسكتلندا وايرلندا نفس الشيء. وأيضا هناك مبادرات اقليميه في الامريكيتين التي يتم تنفيذها من قبل الدول الموجوده في امريكا. سأقف هنا لأن أخذت أكثر من وقتي.
Thank you very much, Riza. I will just summarize a little bit for the room, and after we will back to you for some question if it's possible, if you have time. And sorry for the delay. هحاول بعطي اختصار لمحة على اللي اتقال من الطرفين عشان بساعدكم لو في أسئلة للطرفين قبل ما بيمروا. بالنسبة للOECD هي منظمة التعاون الاقتصادي، هي كل الأعضاء بالنسبة بالنسبة للأو جي بي كذلك هي شراكة الحكومة المفتوحة. بالنسبة للطرفين الأعضاء هم حكومات. بالنسبة للأولى عندها مفهوم بالنسبة لشراكة الحكومة المفتوحة أو الحكومات المنفتحة، هي الحكومات التي هي منوال جديد بتاخذ الحكومات لتحسين وتعزيز خدماتها للمواطن. بالنسبة لشراكة الحكومة المفتوحة بتحاول تشارك كل الأطراف، يعني الحكومة تتعهد بالشفافية، تتعهد كذلك بتشريك الأطراف في كل الأطراف الفاعلة أو المتداخلة في رسم السياسات العامة. مثلا بالنسبة للبلاتفورم ممكن المجتمع المدني يكون هو مستفيد، ممكن كمان يمكن أن يكون هو شريك. كيف يمكن لنا أن نساعد على هاي البرامج بتكون فاعلة وممكن هي تكون يعني بتكون يعني بتحسن وضعية المواطن والمواطن بيحس حاله فيها.
شكرا للجميع. بخصوص السؤال حقيقة يعني شفنا بوابة أور للخدمات الحكومية. التطلع الجديد بمركز البيانات الوطني هو إنشاء بوابة أور للخدمات المفتوحة، يعني البيانات المفتوحة أو المتاحة في طور كتابة السياسة وتصنيف هذه البيانات. يعني ممكن الوزارات حاليا تملك هذه البيانات، لكن المشكلة أنه هي بجزر من الأماكن غير مترابطة غير مصنفة. في طور كتابة هذه السياسة نحتاج دعم دولي حقيقة من الأخوة في المنظمات المشاركة بالمؤتمر، ممكن تساعدنا في تصنيف هذه البيانات وكيفية رسم سياسة للبيانات المفتوحة. التطلع أو الاستراتيجية لمركز البيانات قلت لك أنه هو يعني إنشاء بوابة أور للبيانات المتاحة للجميع لإشراك المواطن، لزيادة الشفافية، مساهمة المواطن في صنع القرار، في اتخاذ قرارات مستنيرة على الصعيد الشخصي أو على الصعيد الحكومي. ممكن الجزء اللي متحقق حاليا من عندها هو مثل ما شفنا بالعرض على بوابة أور اللي هو الخدمة الإرشادية. أكف التواصل بيننا وبين المواطن، بدنا نحصل على إحصائيات معينة، البيانات الخدمات اللي ممكن المواطن يستهدفها، الأسئلة الشائعة اللي يسألها المواطن، تكون عندنا فد رؤية معينة لإنتاج خدمات جديدة. تبقى الشفافية في مجال مراقبة الحكومة وأدائها، مثل ما تفضلت الأساتذة أنه الموازنة تنشر، المواضيع الأخرى الضريبية تنشر، التقارير تنشر. احنا في طور كتابة هذه السياسة، نتمنى أنه يساعدونا الأخوة في هذا المجال.
Donc, sorry for the first question from the government. They said that they started their they process their strategy for openness. They initiate some platform as well. They publish the budget, but they need support just to enhance the citizen participation in the process, especially to design the policy. Then OECD and OGP, are you ready to support them? Alexandru, okay.
After you.
Alexandru.
Yes, so thank you for the question. Absolutely, yes. As I was saying, Iraq is already a member of the OECD MENA governance program. Admittedly, it hasn't participated a lot in this meeting that we're working with.
الاجتماعات التي حصلت في المنظمة فسيجب أن يكون هناك مشاركة حتى يمكننا التنفيذ أو يكونوا أعضاء نشيطين حتى يمكننا بعدها أن نطور وننمي البرامج من خلال المشاركة، ونحن سعداء جدا لفعل هذه الأشياء.
Thank you, Alexandru. Shiriza, go ahead.
Alexandru.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, we do work with sort of other partner organizations who curate eligibility data we use. One of the things that we've been doing with them over the past few years is assisting countries that want to become eligible by providing feedback on, ongoing initiatives or connecting them to relevant partners to be able to change sort of civil society regulations or other underpinning reforms that would make countries eligible. So yes, absolutely happy to provide assistance to the Iraqi government and to civil society on moving this forward, and of course look forward to a future when we can welcome you to the partnership.
شكرا. ثانك يو. تعهد رسمي من الطرفين اللي هم حيساعدوا الحكومة العراقية لتحسين المؤشرات. بالنسبة للقاعة، بالنسبة للمجتمع المدني، هل عندكم أسئلة؟ هل طالبين دعم؟ سؤال، هل في أسئلة؟ في الويب سايت. ممكن حد بيصمم. For the civil society, they will comment on the website, and maybe that after we can share with you the comment and we can see with them, because there is a question, I think. في سؤال في القاعة? Okay, there is no question. Then thank you very much. See you in 25 for the second meeting with the government to see how we will activate this cooperation. It's okay?
Looking forward.
Okay, it's okay? Thank you very much. Thank you again, and sorry for the delay again, and be in touch.
شكرا كثير. Goodbye.
Bye.